All right, so there are three service models, and you can think of them in this kind of a hierarchy. Infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, platform as a service, or PaaS, and then software as a service, or SaaS. So SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS is sometimes what people, how people refer to them. So infrastructure as a service is what AWS is, or Azure for the most part. That means they provide you all of the infrastructure as service. What is infrastructure? Servers, storage, anything that's required to run your compute or storage workloads. Now they extend this a little bit further, but at its core, that's what infrastructure as a service is. Cloud computing or service providers that give you just the hardware, and then you can do whatever you want with that hardware, and all the networking that's associated with it, all the security that's associated with it. So, along with if I'm setting up infrastructure, I've got to set up the required security, right? If I was setting up my own software in my own data center, I'd have to have a data center where the servers are stored. Then there's some kind of security within the data center. Each set of servers is stored in a rack. The rack has to be controlled, access to that rack. All of that stuff is encapsulated or put together and provided as a service. All you see is, oh, I have a server now, but there's a lot that goes behind it. The next tier up is platform as a service. So platform as a service, sometimes it's a little bit hard to distinguish between PaaS and SaaS, but generally a platform as a service is platform that you can configure, that you can build on, that you can change. You're kind of getting the core platform, and then you can tweak it a little bit, or you can change it a little bit. You have no control over the hardware. You have no control over the software that's associated with the platform, but you can make changes, or you can implement the platform however you want. So I'll give you a real life example from my own experience. I used to work at a company called MicroStrategy that some of you might know. MicroStrategy develops business intelligence software. And when I was there, we were developing what was called MicroStrategy Cloud. And that would be something that would be considered as platform as a service, because we would give you the MicroStrategy platform software on configured infrastructure, but then that platform, the business intelligence platform, you could configure in many different ways. There were different databases you could choose from. There were different ways you could set up the front end. Your users, you would set up the way you want. So there's a lot of configuration, but that's really platform as a service. It could be a development platform. It could be kind of an analytics platform, different kinds of platforms. And then the last one, which is probably the most common, is software as a service. So software as a service, I think we've already talked about many examples, but Office 365 is software as a service, probably the most common one. Dropbox, software as a service. Talked about Google Drive. Anytime you're accessing, kind of the end result, the software, the application software, but you're accessing it through the internet, that would be software as a service. Okay, so three different tiers, three very different use cases, and really what we're going to be focused on in infrastructure as service is, or with AWS, is infrastructure as a service. And typically, or often, companies will use infrastructure as a service providers to then deliver PaaS and SaaS solutions. Office 365 might be running on Azure, Dropbox might be running on, I don't know, I don't want to say because I don't know, but each of these software would be software as a service would be running potentially on infrastructure as a service. All right, so let's look at this. What do you get with each of these service models? So let's start with on-prem or on-premises, right? So the green boxes or these teal boxes are what you as the customer or the company manages, and orange is what the provider would manage. So when I'm on premises, I'm managing everything from the networking, storage, servers. If I've got virtualization, I'm managing the OS. And managing the OS means doing things like OS patches, OS upgrades, things like that. Any sort of middleware that you're running, and then all of the data and applications. So essentially, you're operating from top to bottom, everything. You're responsible for everything, for getting everything, for deploying everything, for managing, for keeping it in compliance, for maintaining it, all your responsibility. Now, when we get to infrastructure as a service, and this becomes important when you start to think about who needs to do what. Is it their responsibility? Is it our responsibility? And so when you start working with companies that develop or that provide these different levels of service, it's very important to understand the agreement between you and them. And so when we start with infrastructure as a service, the provider is responsible for networking. The provider is responsible for the storage, for the servers, and for the virtualization. Okay. The customer is responsible for the OS and everything above the OS. Okay. What does that mean? That means that in AWS, if you spin up an EC2 instance or a server, you're going to get a baseline operating system, because otherwise they couldn't spin up a server. So you get, let's say, a Windows server or a Linux server. It is now your responsibility to make sure that that operating system is patched on a regular basis, that your applications are updated on a regular basis, that you look after your data. The provider is not going to be looking after your data. They may provide you the storage facilities. They might provide you the services to store your information, but they're not managing your data. They're not securing your data. They'll give you tools to secure your data. They are not responsible for the security of your data. Okay, so again, especially when it comes to operations and security, this is critical, right? So when you get into security and operations, you need to make sure that you're taking into account your operating system, your data, your applications. And in particular with security and AWS, they talk about security of the cloud and security in the cloud. And they're responsible for security, and it's called the AWS Shared Security Responsibility Model. And they're responsible for the security of the cloud. So they'll make sure your networks are secure, your data centers are secure, your hardware is secure. Originally your operating system is the latest OS and so on. But then everything you do above and beyond that, you need to manage and maintain the security of it. And they're going to give you lots of tools, but if your data gets compromised, somebody steals your data and it's not encrypted, it's your responsibility because you didn't encrypt it. All right, so you're responsible for everything on the top half of that that's in teal. All right, when we get to platform as a service, this is where you get more of a more expanded list of managed components. So again, up until the virtualization is managed by the provider. Now they will also manage the OS. They may not even tell you what operating system it's running on, but they're responsible for it. So they're responsible for patching it. They're responsible for updating it, upgrading it. If anything ever happens because of an OS vulnerability, you can always fall back to them and point the finger at them because it's their responsibility. Any sort of middleware and runtime that's associated with their platform, they provide all of that. But then beyond that, there are two important components. Is one, any sort of application. So if it's a development platform or it's an analytics platform, any applications that you build on it, is your responsibility. Any data that comes out of those platforms, of your applications, you're also responsible for it. All right. So again, sometimes it's a gray line. Sometimes they might provide, you with an encrypted database, or they might provide you tools to encrypt. But it really, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure that, from an operations standpoint and from a security standpoint, you're managing any applications you create and the data that you put onto that system. Now, when it comes to software as a service, this is a completely managed offering, right? So they're going to manage everything from the networking at the bottom all the way to the data and the application. So let's take Office 365. Office 365, you don't have to install the Word application or the PowerPoint application or any of these applications. It's all installed for you. It's all ready to go. You don't have to find a place to store all that data. That data is stored for you. If you want to download it and put it on your computer, that's one thing, but otherwise the data is all managed for you, right? They provide your administrators a way to go and do user administration, which also would be the case up until, infrastructure as a service, but you get this capability to manage users, which is very important in any of these environments. But all the applications, all the data stored by them, you have no say over where that data is stored, how long it's going to be retained, when the data gets deleted for good, all of that kind of thing. So, for example, you might delete a Word document from your repo, from your private repo, personal repo, but you have no guarantee that that document is not being kept by Microsoft, let's say, to provide some kind of a recycle bin or restore functionality. And it's going to be all in agreement, so you can read it and know, but it's their responsibility and their prerogative, their decision how long and how to encrypt and what to use to encrypt, and they'll tell you all of that, but they will be doing all of that. And so that's why you'll see in some situations where companies will not use software as a service. So, for example, one of the key sticking points I've seen in the past, or important sticking points I've seen in the past, is data residency. So many countries require their companies to store data and individuals to store data in their country only. But as you'll see in AWS, you can store data in anywhere you want, anywhere their data centers are located, in the US and Canada, a number of countries in Europe, Asia. But in software as a service, you have no, except what the company tells you or the options they give you, you have no say. And so sometimes companies will say, well, you're storing our data in this other country, but we're operating in this country, we can't use your service. Now, companies have evolved and started to provide some kind of flexibility and options there, but ultimately it's their responsibility and their prerogative. All right, since we're getting close to lunch, we'll do a pizza analogy, okay, just to kind of help this sink in a little bit, make sure we understand what these different models are. So, on premises is like take it home, right? Or sorry, not take it home, made at home. The cheese, the toppings, the sauce, the dough, the oven, the gas, the drinks, the table, you have to provide everything. You have to have gone out and bought it. You have to know how to make the pizza. You've got to make it yourself. It's all you. Nobody else is involved. It's great. You have lots of control over it. You can do it however you want. You want to make a square dough, you make a square dough. You want to make round dough, you make round dough. But you need to know how to do it, and you need to have spent the money to go out and buy all these things, and you need to know the recipe, and you need to know how to cook it. So that's the on-premises model. Then infrastructure as a service is where let's say you have a business you can go to where they're providing you the tables and chairs, they've got drinks there, and they've got ovens for you to use and the heat. And all you need to do is you need to take to them the pizza. So you bring the raw pizza, or you bring your own dough and you cook, make it there, whatever, but you've made the pizza, and you just go there and you're using their infrastructure to heat up the pizza. Sorry, I said it the wrong way around, didn't I? They're giving you they're giving you all of that stuff, the cheese and the dough and the sauce and all of that, and you are providing everything else. Sorry, I mixed that one up. Okay, so you're providing the dough and all of that, or they're providing the dough and all of that, the sauce, the pizza, and then you're just coming home and you're making it in your own oven. Platform as a service, we can kind of connect that with a pizza delivered, right? So what does that mean? In that case, all you have to worry about is you have your own dining table at home and maybe some sodas. The pizza company, the pizza shop is going to take care of everything else. They've got the cheese, the recipes, the cooks, the ovens, the heat. They've paid for all of that. You don't need to pay for any of that. They're going to give this to you. They're going to bring it to you, and you know, you're going to just put it on your table, and you're going to have whatever sodas you want, and that's kind of like platform as a service. And the software as a service is kind of that whole thing. So you're essentially going to go over to Domino's or Pizza Hut or whatever your favorite pizza restaurant is, and you're just going to sit down, you're going to eat, and you're going to leave. You don't have to worry about any ingredients. You don't have to worry about any of the furniture, anything. You don't have to worry about doing the dishes afterwards. You just go eat and you're done.